In regional news, double disasters leave more than 500,000 Victorians without power. Enjoy it while you can. Honey harvest underway in WA, but beekeepers are worried for the future of the hives. Hundreds of years of history destroyed in floods. Is this the end of one of the country's oldest police museums? And sick of expensive flights? We've found the cheapest way to fly. The only catch? There's no engine. Hello, I'm Amy Culpitt. This is Regional News. Victoria faced double disasters this week as fires destroyed homes and wild storms caused havoc across the state. The catastrophic weather killed a dairy farmer and left more than 500,000 properties without power.
Homes ripped apart and live power lines mangled with downed trees. South Gippsland hasn't been declared a disaster zone yet, but it looks like one.
It got windy and then got dark, and next minute we're in for all hell.
A 50-year-old dairy farmer from Merbau North was killed when he was struck by a shed roof that was ripped off in the storm.
We've got a number of people in this street in particular who have lost roofs and whose houses are probably now not inhabitable.
The state is experiencing twin disasters, with fire destroying homes in Victoria's west.
There's just embers everywhere.
Christy Eldred was forced to flee her Pomona home as flames encroached.
We were on the hill watching it burn.
The town has been devastated.
It's probably the worst I've ever seen this situation in Pomona in the 30 years I've been here.
So it's gutted.
With sheds and homes reduced to rubble.
It was too hot to try and do anything, too dangerous.
Dangerous as well for the firefighters. This crew had to shelter under blankets in their truck while trying to save a house in the Grampians.
There was a rapid change in that wind that caused a significant firewall to approach our truck and came over us.
The Commonwealth is ready to do whatever we can to help Victorians through these hard days.
In Melbourne, the wild winds caused destruction across the south and east.
Big shock, I'm just shocking, still I'm in the shock.
The roof of this former theatre was blown off, and a few hundred metres away, this home's sliding doors were blown in.
The wind was totally pushed me back at least a foot.
Bridget Rollison, ABC News.
As communities in Victoria's west begin picking up the pieces of the fires that destroyed dozens of properties and burned through thousands of hectares of land, there's been a groundswell of support for those impacted. Reporter Gillian Area explains.
Acts of kindness and generosity have been flowing here in the state's west following this week's bushfires. On Tuesday, the usually idyllic Grampians National Park was plunged into a terrifying bushfire emergency, with two fast-moving bushfires creating a wall of flames and smoke. At least 44 properties were lost in the small town of Pomona, affecting up to half of the town, which has a population of just 400 people. Another home was lost in Dadswells Bridge, which is about a 30-minute drive from Pomona. In the immediate aftermath of the fires, impacted residents sought refuge at a relief centre which was set up in Stawell. Among those helping out at the centre was a mental health counsellor who was a Pomona resident herself and chose to evacuate early on Tuesday.
I'm trying to support people who are finding out now that they've lost everything. People want to get home and are looking for ways to get home, but I think they're also aware of the danger.
The Salvation Army was also on hand to provide meals to those in need, with the captain in charge of the relief effort deployed from central Victoria.
They're getting some food and being able to have a nice warm meal and things like that. So it's been a great atmosphere here. So it's been quite positive, obviously in the face of disaster.
The Victorian Government has since announced emergency relief payments for eligible community members. There is also a crowdfunding campaign set up by a local bistro owner, which has raised more than $60,000 already for bushfire recovery efforts. Most residents have been able to return to their homes to take stock of their damage, but ongoing support will be critical for those impacted in the coming weeks and months.
A man has died after falling during a water skiing race on the Murray River. The annual Southern 80 race was called off while the circumstances that led to the accident are being investigated.
It's not for the faint-hearted. Top skiers at the Southern 80 water skiing event reach unimaginable speeds, exceeding 100 kilometres per hour. But after a glowing start, today's race was brought to a standstill and eventually cancelled after a skier came down.
This will affect the community for months to come when everyone goes home. It's an absolute tragedy.
Emergency services rushed to the scene, but the man, aged in his early 40s from regional Victoria, couldn't be revived. The accident happened about halfway along the 80-kilometre Murray River course, which starts from Turrumbry Weir, navigating more than 100 corners before finishing at Echuca Moama. Police are investigating the cause of the accident, but say conditions weren't a factor.
The race had passed all criteria to commence. Water levels were no issue that I'm aware of.
It's not the first fatality in the race's history. In 2017, David Morabito was the 6th person to die at the event in 30 years, sparking the introduction of speed limits.
It's the nature of the beast, really, and everyone runs the risk that runs the race. So if you're prepared to do that, hopefully everything goes well and nothing like this happens.
Another 2 people were hospitalised for leg and upper body injuries in separate incidents at the event. A report will be prepared for the coroner. Kate Ashton, ABC News, Melbourne.
The WA Farmers Federation says a fire which destroyed part of an agricultural supplies warehouse in Kwinana may stretch fertiliser and chemical supplies thin. Plumes of black smoke were seen billowing from the warehouse run by Canadian-owned Nutrient Ag Solutions last week. Authorities say the blaze started on a conveyor belt carrying sulphur from a ship to a storage facility. The Department of Fire and Emergency Services says the fire has been extinguished and there's no ongoing risk to the public from the smoke. WA Farmers says the company supplies fertiliser to a significant percentage of the state's farmers.
It is coming up to seeding season. That's when the majority of the fertiliser's been done. I don't know whether most of their fertilisers on hand or not, but yeah, it'll stretch everybody's resources pretty thin, trying to make sure everybody's covered for fertiliser for the year, I think.
There are currently engineers that are assessing those impacts to the conveyor belt, to the warehouses themselves and any surrounding areas, but so far minimal, but the engineers are currently doing that.
The new owners of dessert maker Sarah Lee have been handed the keys to its factory on the central coast of New South Wales after the sale of the business was finalised. The company went into administration last year, owing millions of dollars. The sale has saved 200 jobs in the region.
It's business as usual at Sarah Lee's Lisarow factory as new owners Clark and Brooke Quinn have their first day on the job.
It's been a bit of a process and really glad that part of the process is behind us and now we can start getting into the business.
The most delicious thing I ever tasted is Sarah Lee, naturally.
The brand, which has a long history in Australia, went into voluntary administration last October. The company owed creditors more than $50 million. It resulted in a competitive sale process with around 60 interested buyers. The deal has secured the future of Sarah Lee's 200-strong workforce, most of whom are Central Coast locals.
A lot of these guys have been there for 40 plus years. So really, there's a lot of passion here.
We're in limbo, not knowing whether we're going to have a job or not. So it did put a lot of stress on a lot of us with families and mortgages and everything else like that.
Staff are anxious because of what's happened at the site, but they're guardedly optimistic.
The Quinn family bought another famous brand, Darryl Lee, in 2012, but later sold it. When it comes to Sarah Lee, they say they're in it for the long haul. Despite the sale, more than $9 million in company debt won't be repaid to unsecured creditors, many of whom are small businesses here on the Central Coast.
I totally sympathise with all those suppliers, and the best thing we can do is continue on with being in business here in Lisarow and supporting the local community.
The Quinn family will now look at the company's business model and work to secure its future. Kira Proust, ABC News, Lisarow.
Beekeepers in Western Australia are making honey while the trees blossom in what's predicted to be the last big harvest before the potential devastation of the industry. The huge haul of hundreds of kilos of Marri honey is bittersweet as farmers prepare for the arrival of the destructive varroa mite.
From the tallest of timbers to the smallest saplings, Marri trees are in full bloom across southern WA.
Nice little dollop.
The bumper blossom season is good news for beekeepers.
It's everywhere and pretty much every tree has got either something on or it's absolutely loaded with bud.
The unique nectar is yielding several hundred kilos of honey a day.
Looks good, looks nice and full.
But these producers fear it will be the last time they see a harvest this big before the imminent arrival of the destructive varroa mite. The pest was first detected in Australia in 2022. Nearly 50,000 hives were destroyed by the mite across New South Wales, and it's continuing to spread.
It's a matter of when, not if. We're trying to do everything we can to prepare our own businesses and look to the east coast and further abroad to New Zealand as to what life might look like for us.
So 40 sentinel hives have been placed around the state to act as like an early warning system for the eventual incursion of varroa mite into WA. And certainly commercial beekeepers are on high alert, but authorities say the onus for monitoring hives also spreads to the hobbyists. People like me, one of 20,000 people who took up this fascinating hobby during or after COVID.
The roles and the responsibilities of those recreational beekeepers are no different to any other beekeeper. Biosecurity responsibilities are paramount.
Beekeepers banding together to protect this liquid gold for as long as possible. Anthony Pansia, ABC News, Pemberton.
A primary school in Kalgoorlie has been closed while authorities test for hazardous materials with fears of possible mercury contamination. WA Police say they notified the Health and Education departments after mercury was detected at a property near the school. A WA government spokesperson says potential elevated levels of mercury were found in parts of the school during testing. And while these levels are not usually associated with health risks, they will be investigated as a precaution. They say the testing was carried out in response to a suspected illegal gold extraction operation. Alternative arrangements have been made for the students. Residents in Yass, north of Canberra, have been warned not to drink their tap water after it was deemed unsafe. Recent heavy rain forced the town's treatment plant to temporarily shut down. It's meant locals have been forced to use boiled or bottled water. The council says it may take up to 10 days to fix the problem. Thousands of Australian sheep and cattle stranded on board a live export ship for 5 weeks have finally been unloaded. The MV Bahija pulled into Fremantle Port earlier this week with around 14,000 sheep and 2,000 cattle on board. Originally bound for the Middle East, the ship was diverted back to Australia over security concerns about passage through the Red Sea. The animals will be rested on shore for a minimum of 5 days in a quarantine feedlot. And health authorities are warning thousands of Queenslanders are likely to be infected with Ross River virus in the coming weeks. Increased wet weather across the state has led to a surge in mosquito numbers. More than 4% of mosquitoes tested this week returned a positive result for Ross River virus. Symptoms include fever, swollen and painful joints, and a rash. For centuries, hot springs have been watering holes, meeting places and ceremony sites. Now they're becoming hot property and part of a growing tourism industry in outback Queensland.
It's called Taking the Waters.
It's a revived tradition. Back in the day, in Queensland's early colonial history, there was a huge number of artesian spas and people did flock to them.
Hot springs are again gaining popularity as part of the wellness tourism industry.
I'd probably say the last 5 years there's been a real increase in the number and variety of these sort of experiences around Western Queensland.
More hot springs have emerged in the outback as the Great Artesian Basin recovers from unregulated bore drilling.
We know that there's over 18 of these hot spring experiences already within outback Queensland.
The latest is in Cunnamulla, an 8-hour drive west of Brisbane. A new hot spring resort is expected to double visitor numbers to the tiny remote town.
It'll have a great effect for the flow-on effect for local businesses
We expect businesses will have to expand somewhat.
I think the biggest challenge coming from here is going to be the staffing, having enough room and accommodation for our staff.
The abundance of the artesian waters out here has the potential to make this part of the outback a tourist hotspot. So much so that the government has committed nearly $12 million to fund it.
This adds to the maturity of tourist product that we've got here that'll keep people in these parts of the world longer, spending more money, diversifying our economic base away from just agriculture.
This is something you don't see in outback Queensland or outback Australia anywhere. I think it's amazing.
Water, the lifeblood of the outback. Grace Nakamura, ABC News, Cunnamulla.
A police museum in the tiny Northern Territory town of Timber Creek has always been a popular spot for tourists, immortalising the history of the area. But recent floods have left the museum in disrepair, and there's fears it might now slip into the history books itself.
Full of paper records and fragile artefacts, Timber Creek's museum was the hardest hit building in the town's recent floods.
Welcome to the Timber Creek Police Museum. After flood, it was a beautiful museum.
Bazza Burrows is the museum's volunteer operator.
This is a bark canoe.
He's coming to grips with the scale of the damage.
I thought to myself, that canoe wouldn't hold me. I thought I could jump in that and go down the river and never be seen again. And a lot of people don't want to see me again.
A few weeks ago, all this was underwater. Bazza tried to get the collection up off the floor, but it wasn't enough.
The uniforms, they were all in boxes, they'll be all gone. And the ones on the dummies, well, I don't know, we might wash them down, but nothing like it was. Sit up, get your photo taken. Oh, he fell apart. Well, he would have had a bat and stick in there. That would have been his handcuffs.
Amid the wreckage, there are some silver linings.
These are police reports from 1908. They're all in perfect order, and they were the things that were worrying me. It must have floated or something, but there's not one of them damaged, apparently.
As Bazza continues his clean-up, it's not clear if the museum will ever open to visitors again.
I don't know what's going to happen, to be quite honest.
Territory history at risk of fading from the page. James Elton, ABC News, Timber Creek.
Months of training and hard work has culminated in an official certification for a group of hospitality and catering students with a disability near the ACT border. The recent graduates are now ready to step into a school canteen to serve fresh food to kids in a unique arrangement which teachers say benefits everyone.
Chopping, measuring and preparing food. These recently qualified hospitality workers are on the clock, getting things ready for the lunch rush at the Jerrabomberra High School canteen.
Coming to work makes me feel cheerful. Having to have been treated normally and not have any special treatment or anything.
I'm here, I can be myself, I don't have to put fake it to make it sort of thing.
What makes this setup special is that the majority of these workers have a disability. They say being trained and now employed has been an empowering experience.
Honestly, I thought I wasn't going to get any training, only because it is so hard.
And one that has opened up a world of possibilities.
Well, I'd like to go travel around the world, try working in different places, try to make some different food.
It's also showing students at the school what inclusivity looks like in practice.
Showing that people with disabilities can work, side by side in our school setting.
There were plenty of tears from proud parents and grandparents as 7 employees graduated this week from a state government-funded program that saw them obtain their Certificate 3 in hospitality.
The growth in each of these individuals has been astounding.
The program was modified to focus on the practical.
Anyone who has trouble reading and writing, we were able to do role-playing or take video footage or photo evidence.
There are hopes the scheme can be replicated elsewhere. But more businesses need to come on board to ensure fair, equal opportunities for all. Lottie Twyford, ABC News, Canberra.
A much-loved Northern Territory historian and community advocate has celebrated her 100th birthday, surrounded by family and friends in Alice Springs. Josie Petrick moved to Australia from England after the Second World War on a working holiday, but soon fell in love with the outback and made it her home.
At age 100, Josie Petrick's schedule rivals that of a social butterfly. The Alice Springs centenarian has hardly missed a show from this dance studio in more than 30 years, and to celebrate her birthday, a ballet recital in her honour.
The costumes are beautiful, and everyone keeps no one collides on the stage, which we think is wonderful.
The British-born nurse found herself working as a governess of a vast Central Australian cattle station. There she met her husband Martin and raised a family in the outback. For her friends, Josie is still an inspiration every day.
When I'm feeling dismal, I think of her and I think if she can do it, I can do it.
In the year 2000, Josie was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for her popular book, The History of Alice Springs Through Street Names. Months later, she was carrying the Olympic torch through town. She believes a life of adventure has helped keep her young.
Take every opportunity you have to move or travel, and opportunities don't always knock twice. Just go ahead and do it and hope for the best. Always do your best, whatever you do.
Happy birthday to you. Staying light on her feet 100 years on. Lee Robinson, ABC News.
An historic gold mining town in North Queensland is now home to Australia's largest handmade mosaic mural. 5 million tiny tiles on an 80-metre-long wall tell a tale that it's hoped will lure curious travellers to Charters Towers.
Stretching 80 metres long and 7 metres high, this roadside creation is hard to miss. But take a closer look and you'll discover more than 5 million tiny tiles, telling the tales of a town's gold mining time.
Not only do we have an incredibly rich history to Charters Towers, we've got somebody willing to tell the story in such a way. It's I don't think you can find anything like this in regional Australia.
Artist Trisha Lambie spent 9 months on a series of paintings recreating historical photographs. Her vision was later converted to massive mosaics.
I had to sort of immerse myself in that history and bring it to life.
Gold put Charters Towers on the map in the late 1800s. The town was once the second largest in Queensland. Historian Michael Brumby dug into the archives to help bring the mural to life.
Unlike a painting on a wall, it'll be with us for hundreds and hundreds of years to remind us of the history of Charters Towers.
The work pays special tribute to Jupiter Mossman, credited with first discovering the region's gold.
It was a terrible storm, lightning all around, and it spooked the horses, so Jupiter was the one who had to go and find them, and in doing so he found the gold.
The mural is a finalist in the Australian Street Art Awards, with the winners to be crowned in March. Victory or not, the mosaic's real success will be in its ability to stop traffic.
This is, of course, one of the busiest roads in North Queensland. If you can get people to stay just for an extra couple of hours, it's beneficial to your town.
Lily Nothling, ABC News, Charters Towers.
The Australian desert is a long way from the bright lights of professional American sport, but one aspiring baseballer is spending his off-season from the big-time US leagues in Alice Springs. It's a surprise addition to the amateur competition, but comes as the sport continues to go from strength to strength in Australia.
Blake Whitney has seen bigger fields and better batters, but he's revelling in the outfields of the Outback.
Wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been awesome.
The rookie, who is under contract with the Chicago Cubs as a relieving pitcher with their minor league sides in America, was drawn to Alice Springs for more than a game, travelling to be with his wife, who now works in the town.
She's been making sacrifices to follow me for all these years. I felt like, I had to do it for her.
The Cubs are valued at more than $6 billion, with some players earning tens of millions of dollars a year. But Whitney says he's more in touch with the amateurs stepping into the diamond down under.
Because back home it's a job, and like everybody else, you go to work and you do your job, and it's serious. But out here, I feel like a little kid again. It's a great time.
The marriage between an aspiring professional and a grassroots competition proving the perfect pitch, with youngsters able to lean on Blake Whitney's expertise so they can chase their own American dreams.
I've been getting pitching lessons from Blake, and he's helping me learn new pitches and get my throwing action right.
Organisers say the sport is now attracting more local players too.
We're currently sitting at 335 registered players, which was a 29% uplift in 2023, so we're growing quite quickly across there.
Growth of the game being hit out of the park and beyond. Miles Holbrook Walk, ABC News, Alice Springs.
Dozens of glider pilots gathered in Western Victoria this week for one of the sport's longest running races, spanning over 300 kilometres of farms, lakes and mountains. They're calling for new pilots to take up gliding and offering free instruction to help people take to the skies. As reporter Angus McIntosh discovered, this may just be the cheapest way to fly.
This is Horsham Week. It's one of Australia's longest running glider contests, with pilots racing 300 kilometres through the West Victorian skies with nothing but the wind to power them. And it's not a sport you just walk into.
In gliding competitions, we all must wear parachutes because we fly very close together. The risk of mid-air collision is fairly high in this sport, so you want to have a way of getting out if it all goes pear-shaped.
So I'm 183 centimetres tall, and I'd describe this, my initial impression is extremely cramped. I'm confronted with so many knobs and dials that I've got no idea how to use, but I'm sure that they all make a lot of sense to someone who's been up here before. I can't imagine what it must be like to be flying one of these things at, thousands and thousands of feet. Thermal winds carry these gliders at around 100 kilometres an hour over towns, farms and lakes. With no engine, it takes a practised hand to keep them airborne. And when you can't, you better hope the local farmers are friendly.
Especially in gliding, landing out and not being able to get home, there's always a concern about that, and you always study the weather conditions to see just what it's like. And I've had my fair share of outlandings.
For more than half a century, the Horsham Week glider competition has attracted hundreds of pilots from around Australia and the globe. With many top trainers eager to bring new blood into the sport, it can be one of the most affordable ways to take to the skies.
At club level, to commit to a few flights on a Saturday afternoon is not that expensive.
You don't have this kind of place anywhere else.
And that's the latest regional news. I'm Amy Culpitt. Thanks for your company. We'll see you next time.